Should have had this pulled up already. Sorry.
Database and to narrow down the class of weapons from which this bullet could have been fired.
The general rifling characteristics search will use those class characteristics and will generate a list of possible firearms that could have fired the bullet. But that list is not all inclusive, it is just used as an investigative tool.
Sure. Could you go to page 47, please? Could you tell us what we're looking at here?
This is the results of that general rifling characteristic, or the GRC search.
All right, and what did you determine in terms of, just based on the class characteristics, what weapons could have fired the 6A bullet?
There were several different 30 caliber class firearms that could have fired the bullet.
And they're listed here, correct?
Correct.
Could you tell us what the initials PI and RI and PR mean in the far right-hand column?
They refer to different types of firearms, so rifles, revolvers, machine guns, any type of firearm.
And what are the pistol ones? How is that designated? PI or?
Correct.
And what is RB?
Bolt action?
Bolt action. So based on the class characteristics, any of these weapons could have fired that bullet?
They could have possibly fired the bullet jacket fragment, yes.
Okay. Now, let's go back to the examination of the other two measures, subclass characteristics and individual characteristics. Is one of the reasons you look at subclass characteristics because they can be confused with individual characteristics?
That is a concern, yes.
In fact, your manual says that, right? It's important to rule in or out subclass characteristics to avoid the danger of confusing them with individual characteristics.
I'm not sure if our manual says it verbatim. It says that we do need to assess every piece of evidence for possible subclass characteristics.
And what is the reason for that?
Subclass characteristics can be similar to individual characteristics. However, trained examiners are able to notice the difference between subclass and individual. Subclass characteristics are not always present on an item. It's possible, but not always present. And they tend to look a certain way. They're going to be uniform in their appearance. They're going to be spaced in a way that's more uniform. If you think of circles, those circles could be a distance between each other in the same distance every time, and they will look almost the exact same every time.
Now, does your laboratory have certain protocols for conducting these comparisons?
We have procedures for comparison, yes, like taking photographs, yes.
Well, but also procedures for instance, you have a document called Examination and Comparison of Unfired and Fired Ammunition and Components that deals specifically with the procedures to be followed for the kind of examination you did here, correct?
Yes, I believe that refers to the minimal documentation necessary for a piece of evidence.
And one of those standard operating procedure requirements is document observations and evaluate for the potential of subclass characteristics on the relevant tool working surface, right?
Correct, yes.
And you did that in this case, correct?
I did, yes.
Okay. And what conclusions did you reach?
Can I refer to my notes?
Yes, please.
My subclass assessment that's on page 13 of my report states, stria observed in the land and groove impressions contain starts and stops, are not coarse, and vary in their height, width, depth, and spatial arrangement. No apparent subclass influence.
Okay. And what page was that again?
Page 13.
Page 13. Let me ask you about that. The stria observed are not coarse, I think I understand that, and vary in their height, width, depth, and spatial arrangement. Did you measure the height, width, depth of the land and groove impressions?
The land and groove impression widths? Yes, I did.
And how about the striae? That's different than the land and groove impression, right? correct?
Correct, yes.
You didn't measure the height, width, and depth of those marks, correct?
No, I did not.
Okay. And your protocol says, does it not, due to their similarity to and potential confusion with individual characteristics, it is essential that the evidence be evaluated for the potential of subclass characteristics.
It does, yes.
That's the whole purpose of why you're doing that part of the exam, right?
Correct, yes.
And anywhere in your protocols, does it specify what you're looking for, or is it just up to you to decide what is and what is not a subclass characteristic?
Subclass characteristics are a very large part of the training process to become a firearm and tool mark examiner. There
One of the
are
cops, I think, I don't know.
modules that are taught where you're trained to recognize what subclass characteristics look like, what manufacturing techniques might lend to more subclass characteristics. So I am trained to know what it looks like.
Okay, and my question though was, does your standard operating procedure set out, here are the things you should be looking for? For instance, does it say, if what the marks you're looking at are not coarse and vary in their height, weight, depth, and spatial arrangement, or if they're perpendicular on the barrel, that indicates that it's not a subclass characteristic? Is there anything like that in the manual?
No, there's not.
Okay. Did you inspect the interior of this barrel?
I did, yes.
And did you notice whether it had any debris or dust in it?
I believe my notes state that debris and dust was observed in the inside of the barrel, yes.
Okay, and could you further characterize what that was? Debris,
I think it says dust, so I would say
dust. What can cause dust to get inside of a barrel?
a plethora of things. I'm not sure why something is ever in a barrel.
Okay. So you determined here, you ruled out subclass characteristics, correct?
Yes,
Then the next part of the examination was determining whether you had any individual characteristics on the bullet, correct?
yes.
And what did you conclude in that regard?
That there were microscopic marks of value worthy of comparison or, yes, individual characteristics in the landing groove impressions.
And does your standard operating procedure have any guidance in terms of how you go about determining that?
No, I do not believe so.
Okay. And then once you determine that you have items of value on the question bullet, do you then do something to produce test bullets?
Yes, part of the comparison process when there is a firearm that we receive is to test fire it to make pristine samples to see if reproducible individual marks of value is on the bullet or the cartridge cases.
How many test fires did you produce in this case?
I made 3 sets, so 6 total.
6, is that your standard number of test fires?
Our standard operating procedures state that you need at least 2. There is not a maximum number that we are allowed to do. It's the discretion of the examiner.
Were you informed by other investigators working on the case that this particular weapon was manufactured in Germany in 1938?
I was not, no.
You did not review a report from an ATF agent who investigated that issue?
No, I don't believe so, no.
In doing your examinations, is it important to know something about the manufacturing process of the weapon?
It is helpful to know how a barrel or any part of the firearm is manufactured, yes.
And why is that?
Certain manufacturing techniques will lend to that individual characteristics. So grinding is a method that is known to leave individual characteristics on a tool. So if a item that I receive, I can tell is finished or manufactured by grinding, it already gives me an indication that individual characteristics would be left from that tool to the tool mark.
Now, once you have your 6 test fires, then you did some comparison between the test fires, right?
That is correct, yes.
And why do you do that?
That establishes whether or not there are individual reproducible marks of value on the test fires. It's important to know that because if there's not reproducibility amongst the test fires, then there's a chance to say, oh, it's not going to reproduce on the evidence and I wouldn't have anything to compare it to.
And have you had cases where you fired the 6 test fires and you don't get reproducible marks?
Not that I can recall.
And when you do your comparisons, just looking at the test fires, do you get situations where there's some dissimilarities between those two fired bullets from your test fires?
Yes, there are times there will be disagreement amongst the individual characteristics, even in test fires. You have to think of it as when a bullet travels down a barrel or a cartridge case interacts with a firearm, the marks aren't going to be left onto that item the same way 100% of the time. It's almost like a stamp. If you know you're using a stamp and you put it in ink and then you put it on two separate areas of an item, it might look a little different just from the way the stamp was placed. It's the same thing with a bullet traveling down a barrel or a cartridge case coming into contact with a firearm.
So even when you know a bullet is fired from the same weapon, you can have 6 bullets fired, and when you start comparing them, you will see differences between each bullet.
There's a possibility to see some areas of disagreement. However, if I'm rendering an identification and saying there is reproducible individual marks of value on these test fires, there will be an overwhelming amount of sufficient agreement of that individual characteristic.
Now, when you're doing these comparisons, you use something called the AFTE theory of identification, don't you?
Yes, the AFTE theory of identification.
All right, and take a look. And that's the standard that you used in this case to draw the conclusions that you made in the report that I showed you earlier, correct?
That is the theory stating how an examiner is able to come to a conclusion when examining 2 or more sets of tool marks. And yes, that is how I go through my examination and how I come up with my conclusion, yes.
Okay, and what is AFTE?
AFTE is the Association of Firearm and Toolmark Examiners. It's the governing body of the firearm and toolmark community, whose primary goal is to further research and continue to show information about manufacturing and the evolution of firearm and toolmark examination. They hold annual seminars, publish a glossary of terminologies used by the firearm community, and they also have a peer-reviewed published journal.
Peer-reviewed published journal. Can I join AFTE?
You can, most of the firearms community, members are firearm and toolmark examiners. There are also technical advisors and associate members.
Mm-hmm.
Those members are not usually firearm and toolmark examiners, but they still have a livelihood in firearm and toolmark examination, meaning they conduct research or they are involved in products or manufacturing. And anybody is allowed to come to the annual seminar or get the journal. You just have to pay the fee.
You just have to pay the fee. Okay. Could you display to the witness Exhibit 27, please? Do you recognize what's displayed here?
It appears to be the AFTE theory of identification, yes.
All right, I move that into evidence, Your Honor.
What is it?
This is the standard that she used to make the comparisons in this case, correct?
Would this be Carner 27
This would be Carner 27, Your Honor.
to the state?
Your Honor, if I may voir dire the witness on this exhibit, I've never seen it before, I don't think.
All right,
Oh.
let's go ahead and do so. Mr. McBride.
What's this?
When was the last time you reviewed this document?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Can you testify as to its accuracy by looking at it now?
Not verbatim, no.
Your Honor, no more questions. My objection is lack of foundation.
Mr. Byrd.
Does this document accurately state what the theory is?
May I take a moment to read through
Yeah,
it?
sure.
Don't lie, bitch. She's looking nervous.
I believe something, I think the first statement is different than what I can recall, but overall, it is what the AFTE theory states.
Uh-oh.
Okay. And your ATF protocol refers specifically to the AFT theory of identification, does it not?
It does, yes.
Okay, so is there any difference between what's in 27 and what's in your manual?
Again, I don't remember without looking at them side by side.
Okay. Let me get that in front of you. Let's go to Exhibit 12. And go to theory of identification and range of conclusions. Page 1 of 3. I don't have a Bates on it. Toward the end. It's document FT 10. No, that's not it. Could I put you in, Sherman?
You may.
Page 1 of 3 of your protocol. I think it was.
I recognize this as something that comes from our SOPs, yes.
Okay. And it refers to the AFT theory of identification, right?
It does, yes.
Same theory that's displayed in 27?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd renew my offer on 27.
Your Honor, the objection stands. Language matters. Without knowing what, if this language is identical to what she's trained on, that can make a big difference. Whether the word sufficient or adequate is used, these are scientific principles, and we need to be precise in the language that's used. The witness cannot authenticate the exhibit that's been offered, so it should not be received into evidence.
Mr. Burke?
Goes to weight, not admissibility. You'd be free to question her about any differences, but I think she's laid a foundation that the theory is the same, so.
All right. Well, I remind the parties that this is a probable cause finding, and so as it relates to what's been presented, the witness has said that it looks familiar. Again, I don't want to quote you, I don't remember the exact phrase, but she recognized portions of it and then was given the opportunity to compare it to her standard operating procedure. I think she said SOP. For those reasons, Carner 27
Yes.
is admitted and may be
Okay.
published.
All right.
Looking at the language of this, the second part of it, according to AFT, says, currently the interpretation of individualization, identification is subjective in nature. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Why is it subjective in nature?
The conclusions that I author are of my opinion.
Of your opinion?
Correct.
Does your, you can take that down, thank you. And no, wait a minute, go back if you would. But while he's doing that, does your manual state what you're looking for under this theory is correspondence of individual characteristics?
Yes.
That the theory is that if you see a certain level of correspondence, you can make a source identification, but not to the exclusion of all other firearms in the world, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the standard, at least as it's articulated here, is the theory as it pertains to the comparison enables opinions of common origin to be made when the unique surface contours of two tool marks are, quote, in sufficient agreement. And is the subjective part of that, the quoted part, sufficient agreement?
The subjective part of the conclusion is saying, yes, it is my opinion that there is or is not sufficient agreement or sufficient disagreement amongst two or more tool marks.
And what may constitute sufficient for you may be completely different from the next examiner. Fair?
Yes and no. I would expect any trained, competent examiner to come to the same conclusion. So the threshold of sufficient agreement might be different from one examiner, but the conclusion I would expect to be the same.
Does your manual state, your ATF manual, section 431, state that correspondence or lack thereof of individual characteristics is not easily communicated? An observation such as significant agreement can mean different things to each examiner. This does not serve as interpretable descriptions of what was observed because the individual performing the review will likely have his or her own concept of the phrase based upon their training, experience, and knowledge.
Objection, Your Honor. This question goes to weight. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't want to may I be heard?
If you're objecting, I will hear the objection.
It's just speaking objection. That's why I stopped myself. This goes to weight. This goes to credibility. And the witness's report has already been admitted as is appropriate under the Utah Constitution, Rule 7B and Rule 1102 of the Rules of Evidence. This is beyond the scope of preliminary hearing for those reasons.
Mr. Byrd.
Number one, that's a general objection, which I think has been waived. The state was privy to the interview with this, pre-hearing interview with this witness where these same questions were asked. We had a scheduled hearing where the court was going to rule on objections. The state indicated in advance of that hearing that it had no objections to the testimony, reserving the right to make particular objections. But the objection being made is a global one. And it's relevant because the state offered, the evidence I'm offering here is relevant because the state offered through a hearsay declarant the meaning of this report that this examiner authored. And I'm trying to inform the court on what the limitations are of the opinions expressed in the report that the state offered. And it's certainly relevant to the reliability issue to know that the opinion is based on a subjective standard that the witness herself admits is subjective. So I think it helps the court understand what weight, if any, to give to this report that the state offers.
All right. Mr. McBride, final thought.
That's all fine, but it's inviting the court to weigh the evidence. That's the whole point. And at this point, the inferences are drawn in the state's favor, and the court is not to weigh even contrary evidence.
Okay. Well, in regards to whether objections have been waived or not, the court as the magistrate bears the ultimate responsibility to ensuring that this hearing is a probable cause standard. And so that's a responsibility that as a magistrate I take seriously. I understand the arguments from the parties. I'm going to overrule the objection, but Mr. Burt, this is, we don't need to go 100 miles down a path where 1 mile is where probable cause may be. And so I invite you to refocus, to bring it
Sure.
to the probable cause.
Hurry the fuck up.
I'm not trying to limit what your theories or such, but I need to hold to probable cause.
Absolutely, and I don't even need a quarter of a mile. This is my last question, and I'm going to move to another
All right.
topic.
Thank you, Mr. Burt.
Is that what your manual states?
I don't remember it verbatim, but it does sound accurate.
Well, could you pull up Exhibit 12, page... Just to... Can I approach again?
You may.
I did give you 2 pages. Bottom of the page, highlight.
I see where you were reading from, yes.
Do you see,
Yes,
did I accurately read it?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you. Can I approach you?
You may.
Okay. Now let's return to the report, the People's or State 32. And if you would go to the second page, please. You concluded here, did you not, that the Exhibit 6A bullet jacket fragment could not be identified or excluded as having been fired from the Exhibit 1A based on an agreement of all discernible class characteristics and neither sufficient agreement nor sufficient disagreement of individual characteristics. The result of the comparison was inconclusive.
Yes,
That was your ultimate conclusion, right?
yes.
And on the next page, if you would go to 2 pages in, you have an appendix, do you not, where you explain what inconclusive means? Next page, one more. There we go. I want to ask you, because I'm unclear on what inconclusive means, you say reasons for an inconclusive or include the presence of microscopic similarity that is insufficient to form the conclusion of source identification, a lack of any observed microscopic similarity, or a microscopic similarity that is insufficient to form the conclusion of source exclusion. Could you specify which of those possibilities exists in this case? Was this a case where you had microscopic dissimilarity, but in your opinion, it was insufficient to form a conclusion of source exclusion?
No, my conclusion is inconclusive, just as it says in the appendix. There's a lack of sufficient agreement and sufficient disagreement, so I'm unable to say one way or another.
Okay, but I guess my question is, were there points of dissimilarity between the question and the known bullets?
Again, there was sufficient agreement and there was not sufficient agreement or sufficient disagreement. So yes, there was times that I saw agreement in the striations and the landing group impressions, also seeing disagreement, but there was also a lot of lack of microscopic marks of value to see it all. So because of this lack of quality and quantity of marks to be able to see, it never reached the threshold of sufficient agreement nor sufficient disagreement. So an identification or exclusion could not be rendered.
Okay, I think you and I have met before today, correct?
Yes,
Where we talked about what that term inconclusive meant, correct?
yes,
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did I read to you from a
This motherfucker
Do you recall me
liar.
asking you whether you agreed with this statement, that an inconclusive conclusion indicates that the microscopic marks in question may or may not have originated from the same or known source?
I do remember you asking, yes.
And you agreed that that was a correct definition of what you concluded in this case, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so I want to, if I could, return to 10. Exhibit
Bro
10.
said I'm gonna ask one more
In
question.
Exhibit 10, not 10, I'm sorry.
20 questions
Your
later.
case file again. This is the 47-page document. There we go. What's the tab? 6. Okay. In your case file, you have produced for us some nice comparison photos of your comparisons, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And if you would go to page 37. is the top photo depicting one test fire on the left and another test fire from the same gun on the right?
Yes, it is.
So do you see areas of agreement and areas of disagreement in these two bullets fired from the same rifle?
I see sufficient agreement amongst the striations that are in this land impression.
Okay, and tell us where they are. When you draw that conclusion, using this subjective theory of identification, show us what you're looking at.
Is it touchscreen?
Probably,
No, it's
Oh,
No.
I'm sorry.
but we can, if you direct us, we can get there with a pointer.
Sure. So you can see towards maybe the last third of the bullet or the land impression that, yes, right where your cursor is below there, that's an area of agreement with that striation. It looks like it's going from the left to the right, so that mark is appearing on the test fire on the left and the test fire on the right. Then if you look towards the top of that land impression, there's going to be some more lighter colored striations or lines that are moving from left to right. Those areas are in agreement as well.
Where is that? Not as far up as where he is, correct? It's down?
Yes, and I believe the PowerPoint that I provided does have some areas and circles of some of these marks, if that would help as well. But if you move your cursor up, continually up, keep going. There you go. You have a line that was right there, and you have several others underneath of it that looks like it's going just straight across from left to right, and that shows an observed area of agreement.
So that one he's got circled on the right, I see a line there. Are you saying you see a line on the left that it's identical to the one on the right?
I'm saying I see agreement amongst those striations, yes.
Okay, anything other than those two areas?
You can really go down the entirety almost of that line looking at those striations. So under the top red circle, there's another area there. Yep, if you start right there, you draw your circle over. Except at the top of the circle, there's a highlighted line on the left that goes all the way to the right. If you go a little bit farther down, maybe still in the top third of that circle, you can see another line going from one side to the other, another area of agreement as well. And then under the final third circle, in the little darker area down there, there's still some lines, again, in sufficient agreement.
Okay, and again, these are comparisons between test fires. So you know the rifle that you're test firing fired these two bullets, right?
Yes, and the
Okay.
purpose of those test fires is to ensure that though it was fired from the same firearm, you want to make sure that those individual characteristics are reproducing.
All right, so go to the photo on the bottom of that page. This is the first of several comparisons between the test fire on the left and 6A on the right, correct?
Yes.
And what does the writing on the top mean, blue index GIMP?
So that will be, the first number there is the case number, the laboratory case number. Then next 1.11B is going to refer to the specific test fire that's on the picture. And then V versus 6A, so that's the evidence that's also pictured. GIMP stands for a groove impression, so I'm looking at a groove impression in this photo. Blue index means I'm specifically looking at the groove impression that I have put a blue indexing mark on so that I know where I am during the comparison process.
Okay.
30x refers to the magnification that the photo was taken at, and then INC refers to inconclusive, the final conclusion.
So I'm interested in the areas of disagreement. Are there areas of disagreement between the known and the unknown here that you could point us to?
So for this photo, to me, I see areas of agreement in the top. And then on the way down from the 6A, right after you see those two highlighted lines near the top, there's a lot of damage that is observed, and almost no microscopic marks of value can be observed at all. So again, that lends to the lack of quality and quantity of marks even to do a comparison. It's almost like missing data points.
Okay, missing is not the same thing as dissimilar though, right?
It just means there's nothing there to call agreement or disagreement.
So do you see areas of disagreement here or no?
On the striations that are available to me on this groove impression, I see areas of agreement, and specifically talking about those two highlighted lines at the top on the right.
Okay, go to the next page, please. top photo on the next page. It's B38. You see areas of disagreement in this photo.
So this is the same photograph that we looked at before, just at a different magnification. It's zoomed in a little bit more from 30 to 40x. So again, I'm looking at those two highlighted lines near the top, and then if you look down, you can almost see that damage a little bit better, and there's none of those striated lines that you see on the test fire, which you would expect to see in a lander groove impression on the right at all. So again, no microscopic marks of value to compare whatsoever.
All right, how about the bottom photo? And again, the question, areas of disagreement.
The possibility of an area of disagreement maybe in the middle. There on the 6A is a line that does not look like it carries over, but just from this snapshot, I cannot say if I had moved the photo a little bit different or the specimens together, that area would be agreement. In this photo, it does not look like it does, though.
Okay. And could you go to the next photo, please? Same question here, areas of disagreement.
The way this photo was taken is highlighting more of the lack of microscopic marks of value. If I had pulled the specimen that's on the left, the test fire over, there might be some agreement that could be observed, but the way the photograph is now, you don't see the line on the right going all the way over. But again, this is just a snapshot of one particular area.
Doesn't show areas of agreement or disagreement.
There is an area of agreement at the very bottom of the photo.
Okay,
Correct, yes.
next photo, please. How about this one?
This is another zoomed in of the previous photo, focusing in on that bottom area of agreement. So we went from 30x to 40x and just highlighting one specific area, and this is showing you agreement.